So we're going to talk about Dr. Nigel Clark leaving for the IMF. Today was his last day. What's next for his ministry and for Jamaica, in your opinion?
So with Dr. Clark, with Dr. Clark's role officially ending today as the Minister of Finance, what we're likely going to see is an official announcement tomorrow from Jamaica House, or I should say the Office of the Prime Minister, as to who will take on the role. Now, the Minister of Finance role is a special role as guided by our Constitution, such that the Minister of Finance has to be an MP, similar to a Prime Minister. So, effectively, it could be the Prime Minister, or it could be another member of the JLP cabinet who is a minister. But we're definitely going to get some announcement within the next 2 days, probably by tomorrow morning. But in terms of the direction for the finance ministry, it's really going to come down to the strategy of the new finance minister or state minister that runs that operation. But I don't really see a deviation from Dr. Clark's plans or what he had built up over time, because Dr. Clark would have instilled a decent level of trust from the Jamaican public. He would have led several critical transactions and different activities that have been to the benefit of Jamaicans. So you've gone several years, hearing no new taxes. They are still able to increase the inflows into the government coffers, but not to the detriment of the ordinary citizen in a sense. We have the reverse tax credit, we had the securitization of receivables, the TGH transaction, helped out Jamaica big time when we had COVID. So likely we're going to see a continuation of, just sensible and responsible policy, but you should just see who's going to be the captain, directing that ship.
Interesting. Looking at the comments in the chat right now, I see Raquel saying other. She says no to Andrew Holness. Jamar says Favour Williams should be the next finance minister. Who do you think it should be?
Kalila, as a man who doesn't get himself involved in politics, I leave my comment out of the situation. And on Instagram, I said Dr. Clark is our best finance minister in modern Jamaica. I am not going to get political, but it's the truth. Dr. Clark has made finance actually appealing to the average man, and it's going to be hard for someone to really surpass his legacy. But I'm looking forward to see who comes in the role and what they do, because a strong finance minister is crucial to stability and confidence in the country's operations and just in general.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Favour has my vote. I can say that publicly. I did release a video several weeks ago, outlining the pros and cons of the various choices, but I never did say who I thought it should be. And let me just say that publicly. I think it should be Favour Williams. She has the experience. She's not as exciting as Dr. Clark, but when you remember when Nigel Clark first started, he wasn't all that exciting either. He had to grow into the role and develop some theatrics, and I think Favour can do that as well. Although it is not absolutely necessary for the position, it is fun to have when you're covering a 3-4 hour budget debate, to have those theatrics in Parliament. I want to move on to another topic, because Portland JSX, which is a company that we don't talk about much on this show. I'm not sure if we've ever spoken about this company on this show. They are set to reap more gains from Portland Caribbean Fund. So before you tell us about that, tell us what these companies actually do. Because like I said, we've never spoken about them before.
Well, the way I think of Portland JSX is a part of the textbook that you should just say you should study, but you probably never actually use it in real life. So most cases, we always hear about LLCs, limited liability companies, where the most you can lose is what you invest, and the liability is only limited to the company itself. Portland JSX, is a limited partner with respect to the Portland Caribbean Fund 2. So the Portland Caribbean Fund 2, would be the fund that each party, I should say, invests through. to derive gains. So to wind back a little bit, you have two sets of partners in a sense. The general partner has unlimited liability and runs the day-to-day operations of the business. Your limited partner, which is Portland JSX, their liability is only limited to what they invest. They're basically silent. They just observe, and these structures, do give the ability for different entities to co-invest alongside these different strategies and benefit, without having to take on greater risk and they potentially would desire. So to break it down, Portland Private Equity is the general part. Well, one of the Portland entities is the general partner. Portland JSX, I believe, IFC International Financial Corporation, and several other entities are limited partners. So they invest capital into Portland Caribbean Fund 2. Portland Caribbean Fund 2 buys stakes or does different structured deals with their target companies. So, for example, the third or fourth largest shareholder in Productive Business Solutions is the Portland Caribbean Fund 2, basically, which is done through which Portland JSX has an indirect stake in, basically, through their investments as a limited partner. With respect to, let's think of other companies on the portfolio right now. So ITL BPO, the I should say the Diverse Assets Inc. company, which owns Tropical Battery, Diverse Assets Jamaica, Choka. Those are companies that also are under the Portland Caribbean Fund 2 portfolio, and so on and so forth. So what has been happening in the last year is that it's at the end of what you'd call the private equity life cycle, committed life cycle period, whereby the Portland Caribbean Fund is now selling some of these investments, as you would say, to realize the gains. And some of these gains are now flowing back to limited partners as part of their distribution agreement. And as a result, you're seeing Portland JSX have a reduction in its investments on its balance sheet, but the cash itself is actually going up. So basically, Portland JSX is now trying to realize more of these investments. So they mentioned Group IGA in Colombia. Well, not them, but Portland Caribbean Fund 2 is selling its stake in Clarion Group. Remember that NCB Financial Group is actually selling a 30% stake in Clarion to Cornerstone Financial Holdings. They're looking to also realize gains on Productive Business Solutions, PBS. And they're just looking to extract more and more value from the other portfolio assets that are there. Now, what's going to happen next? The intention is for those proceeds that have increased in value over the timeline or invested period to be reinvested into Portland Caribbean Fund 3, which is going to seek new investments. So it's mainly focused on the private equity space. And to just keep it simple, anything of private equity is usually taking a company that's not public and eventually selling it to a third party, selling it to the market through an IPO, or selling it back to the company itself in a particular structure to realize a particular gain. So I think Proven is a relative example, not the best example, but they would have spent, I can't remember the exact figure, but they bought Access for $9 back in 2014 December. They sold about half of their stake in September 2019 for $32. So they still retained 20% of the company, but they'd have already realized the gains and they're able to redeploy those funds into other investments. That's really private equity. Venture capital, is basically dedicated towards startups or companies with potentially fast, high growth rates. But private equities, we focus more on companies that are established, already growing, has structure. So Portland JSX realizes investments is good because there's possibility for them to distribute even a minor dividend depending on the size of these exits. to benefit the shareholders, which are mainly
I
pension
was just
funds.
about to ask, is Portland JSX a good dividend paying company?
They never paid dividend before, Kalila. So effectively, to keep it simple, Portland JSX invests the capital through Portland Caribbean Fund and then does some direct investments. Those investments go through what I call a gestation period, basically where they're supposed to gain value as the company grows. And at the end of the period, they try to exit those investments and then either reinvest that capital back into another private equity deal or pay some of it as dividends to shareholders. So I just remember that better private equity example. So first, private equity would have bought 75% of dollar for $1.1 million US. They sold $187 million worth of shares, or about 10%. In the IPO, they would have sold more than $1 billion worth of dollar to Mayberry and SPL, and they still retain a 20% stake that gives them dividends, but they would have already realized a significant gain on their investment within a relatively short time span. So as you can
So
see,
I
Portland
just I just
JSX still
brought up
trade much.
the trading history. It's traded pretty flat. This is the past 3 months. Let's look at 6 months.
It's a pension fund stock, Kalila. It's not going to trade as much
Small
as
dips.
a regular operating business.
Year to date. Well, I'm just trying to figure, what is the advantage of investing in this company if they don't pay regular dividends and there's not much change in the stock price over time?
So remember that I mentioned earlier, companies mainly for pension funds because pension funds have particular restrictions on how and what they can invest their money into. So Portland JSX was basically a avenue for pension funds to get exposure to private equity with as a workaround to that restriction of them buying directly into these what you'd call more so riskier ventures, because the possibility is always there for a company to lose money. So Portland JSX is this vehicle for pension funds to get that exposure. And if all those play out and they start paying dividends, pre-tax dividends as well, then the pension funds are vindicated for their choices of investing into Portland JSX.
All right, so it's a play for the big guys, basically.
Yep.
I see a comment here. Roswell says, company like that who keep the profits to themselves is not so attractive to me. I mean, I get it. Same thing I was looking at. All right. Well, thank you so much, David. Before you go, let me ask you, what is your favorite taking stock memory? Because you have been here, like I said, from day one, from our very first episode.
As I said, Kalila. So two particular moments. So you mentioned one of them, which was with Dr. Clark, and I saw you on Friday with a belly, and on Sunday on Instagram, I see you with Ryan already out of the womb. And then, a couple weeks before that, we would have taken stock going through IPOs, going back through, for example, the first week IPO, and, the way admin has changed over time, and, just back then thinking of how you were doing those preloaded shoots, how we were always just like in between guests and, just going through that initial grinding stage, because 5 years later, we're doing it virtually, whereas back when we started, we're doing pre-recorded shows and we're just, stopping, making corrections, bringing back in. So I really think back to those moments because it's really funny to think that 5 years ago I was, not as knowledgeable as I am now, but I still had a way to express myself and try and create some level of understanding to the general audience. And it's good to try and explain things that happen in the stock market or in general, because you don't know the impact that you will have on someone's life by providing valuable information that some might see as insignificant.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us on this journey, David. We appreciate your consistency and your knowledge, your presence week after week. You always deliver. I can always count on you.
You're welcome, Kalila. Take it easy.